right? I don't like to think that way, Tony. I'm an optimist or something. I don't know.
I was gonna die.
I'm actually just a contrarian, but I'm
prepared pessimist as well.
Right. All right, guys. Let's circle up, and we're gonna want to circle so that I need everything to face so that the camera can see the hand stuff. So if we want to circle up around this area, and Mike, can I grab you? I think we shift back a little. Okay, so today, guys, we're gonna focus on the Kata, which is translates to single wing choke, which is a pretty straightforward choke as far as like how it functions. There's some details we're going to go over that'll maximize its effectiveness or efficacy. But before we get into that, like the choke itself, because like we'll get through that pretty simply. I want to talk a little bit about some of the setup and conditional dynamics, because I feel like compared to the other chokes that we've gone over thus far, the bow and arrow and the clock, this choke is much more reliant on the positioning and the setup than those two, right? Meaning, let's say I have Mike's back, the reality is whether I set up by getting the blade of the hand, he extends away, boom, I get the grip, whether it's we're hand fighting, boom, and I just happen to get that hand in there. As long as I get this grip, especially if I get the deep grip, if I get that deep collar grip, I mean, realistically, there's not a lot of reasons why this should fail. Like, there's not a lot of reasons why I should not get the choke once I get this grip. The variations I have at my disposal, the clock choke is right there. If he starts defending the clock choke, right, we know the defenses and so on. The conditions really are all predicated for the clock and the bow and arrow on me getting this grip, right? Whereas the Kata is a little bit more reliant on two very specific positional elements, okay? And in order to examine that, we need to then go into another parenthetical and sort of examine clock, like back chokes in general. This is like Inception now, where we're like a parenthetical inside a parenthetical, and I gotta like work my way back out. This is like the scene with the snowboarding guys and the ski masks. Ken Watanabe's like 80 years old now somewhere. I just spoiled Inception for you, I'm sorry. So I guess that's reference. So if you break down basically every back mount choke, there is. Here, actually, I'll keep you there if you want. It's really, every single one of them are built on, I would say, three key dynamics. Number one is that a grip from behind is going in front and getting a collar, whether it be a shallow grip or a deep grip. Number two is that same arm, traditionally speaking, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, spoiler alert, is shelving the back of the head, or the back of the neck, however you want to phrase that. Because, obviously, if I have this deep grip, even if I have it deep, if Mike were to, say, shift his hips forward and put his head to the mat, so just like, not so much like that, but like imagine you're trying to throw my elbow over your head like a coach, right? Now imagine, let's say we go back, and I want you to just shift your hips down and clear this elbow. So shift your feet forward and clear this elbow, right? So if I can't shelf the back of his head, then this grip no longer matters, right? If I, say we switch positions, if Mike has this collar grip, and I were to just clear out from underneath of it, well, this grip no longer matters. So equally as important as the grip is the shelf, right? And then with that, I have my counter pressure control or grip on usually the opposite side of the choke side that's sinking in this choke, right? So in the sense of the clock choke, it's the far side arm using this lapel to the floor. In the bow and arrow, it's grabbing the pant leg, the blade of the wrist, whatever, and doing that sort of rear delt motion, right? So what that means in regard to what I want to focus on today is that if he clears his head of this elbow, if he clears his head of this shelf, then I lose my choke. I lose all of the chokes, right? If I have a clock choke, and Mike, you do what I just did to you, where you just shift down and just keep shifting, instead of trying to even turn, just keep shifting forward. Eventually, if he clears my elbow, well, I can't clock choke once my elbow's cleared, right? Bow and arrow choke, right? I can't bow and arrow choke once my elbow's over his head. This is where the Kata Hajime comes into play. This is what the Kata Hajime essentially is designed for, because if I were here, shit, I cleared my elbow, and I were to thread this hand behind the back of his head, well now, I have my choke again, because I have recreated the shelf I need. And this is the function that this arm is, like this is the function of this arm, this shelf dynamics. Let me see a shelf. So meaning, if I had my choke and my elbow cleared, I can shift this behind his head and use that as my shelf. And then this is purely a choking mechanism. Does that make sense, guys? Kind of a lot of explaining, but it'll make more sense once we get into the actual transition of like why I want to go in, like what I want to talk about that. So I have the position. Let's start with the clock. I'm setting up the clock choke, and instead of defending the choke the way that we laid out before, where he's going to try to shift out to the side and sort of turn to face me, his defense is going to be to shift low, right? He's going to keep shifting low, and if he keeps shifting low and I don't do anything about it, he will eventually clear this elbow. It's like I want to pinch my elbow so we go back a few paces. Certainly as he's trying that, I want to pinch my elbow tight, and as keep going down and forward, right? I want to stop him, but there is going to come a moment at times where they're going to do this escape, and this head is going to clear, and I know it's going to clear. Now I want to note something. I don't want to wait for it to clear. I don't want his head to clear and then start trying to attack this. At this point, we're definitely in the land of multiple variables, like a lot of variables. But let's say we go back. However, if we are here, and let's shift a little bit to the left. Thank you. I'm in the situation for the clock choke. He begins to shift down, right? Now I'm losing the elbow. I know I'm losing the elbow. This is time to transition to his elbow. So if my elbow starts to clear, I transition to his elbow. Okay? The second main dynamic, and this is also why the setup is very important, right? Because you just saw, like, that was stupid easy. I just got right to there, right? Okay? Check this, guys. Check this out real fast. Let's sit back, Mike. Mike, I'm going to try to move this arm out of position. Do not let me. Okay? It's really hard. It's really hard to move somebody's arm like, away from their side, right? That's where all the muscles are against their body. This is very challenging to do when I am really far away from my own body and he's really close to his own, right? I mean, we all understand this pretty intuitively, right? Look at me crossing my hands. This is bad. Don't do this. I know, right? Mike should just cross his feet and just like ankle lock me all over. I know. And I thought he was a real brown belt. Pretty simple logic, right? The farther away from my body my hand goes, the weaker my grip becomes. If I told you to hold a 50-pound weight like a kettlebell against your chest, you could probably do that for quite a long amount of time. I told you to hold it out here, right? Like that number would decrease significantly. So the Kata Hajime is very problematic as far as a choke to lead with because, number one, the situation is predicated on, so let's say if he's super loose here, the situation is predicated on the first place is a shelf getting cleared that does not need to get cleared up here, right? I don't have a problem with him clearing his head at this point when he's facing up. And secondly, his arm is far away from me. So if I were to try to get to that positioning, go ahead and just keep your elbow tight, it would be very hard, like pinch your right elbow real tight, it would be very hard for me to force the situation. Here's what's cool about this. Shift down, please. Right? Give me a little bit of resistance on that. Right? It's really easy to move. Because it's now farther away from him than it is for me. He brought it close to me. He shifted his shoulders down, he brought that elbow close, and now I can go after it. So, what I want to do for this choke, I want to find the elbow. Now, honestly, whether I actually hook on the inside at first or not is relatively, I would say, unimportant. But the key is I need to go down to the elbow, and I want to bring his arm up. I want to make him raise his hand to the teacher. Okay? That's my first step. Excuse me. Which choke are we? Got that. Okay? I do not go after the armpit. That is stupid. I don't know why anyone would think that would work. Don't let me move your arm, please. Ah! Like why his arm would move at the exact point it connects to his body is pretty beyond any sort of logic, but just in case I need to mention that, slide down to the elbow. Again, I don't necessarily have to lace through. It'll be better if I do, but I mean, even if I'm just like, let's say your hands are in tight, like what you're doing, it's like even if I just get that, now I thread. Okay? From here, we're ready to go to the choke. This is a shallow grip choke, right? So this is not super deep inside here. This is a shallow grip. So I want the notch of my forearm against the carotid artery on the same side, feeding to that grip. I have this arm here, and my goal now, I made him raise his hand to the teacher, now I want to make his elbow touch his head. As I make his elbow touch his head, I'm turning my palm towards me like I'm reading a fortune cookie. That wasn't racist, right? We're doing chokes like Kata, Jime, right? I didn't mean it that way. Damn it. Now I gotta apologize. We're gonna have someone gonna take over this class. Chad's the new instructor, guys. Congratulations, Chad. I learned, read my fortune cookie, cool, as I bring this arm behind the back of his head. What I want, let me sit you up, please. What I want is the back of my hand to kind of flex out like this, almost like rounding, and cradle the back of his neck. We're not trying to like push his head forward. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. Is that weird? Is that unusual? All right, well, guys, we're gonna re-warm up, and we'll just spend like 20 minutes doing this. Yeah. Basically, I'm going to do it this way. I want to cradle the back of his neck. If it's a straight line, that's okay. What we're not trying to do is, especially, like, we don't want palm forward, and we don't want to try to push his head forward. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to make a shelf, right? So we're not trying to make some bullshit loopy shelf trying to push his head. We're making a block. Yeah? So I'm going to create the conditions from here just because it's going to be easier to see. So I'm here. I make his elbow touch his ear. Hand goes behind the back of the neck. For my finish here, guys, I'm not doing like this. A lot of people get to this choke and then they do like this. I'm pulling my hand back, moving my elbows and stuff, right? That's not what the finish here is. Sorry. What I'm going to do, and I'll show this first outside of like context, is I have my grip, and I'm going to make my fingertips and my pinky and my knuckles meet on the other side. So I want to make a little loop in the middle here. That is my choke. So as I'm here, I get this up high, get this back here, and I'm making them meet on the other side. That's how you make this choke happen. This is not like me pulling back in space, because if I pull back in space, he's just going to pull forward in space. He's going to grab this hand. Let's say, Mike, you grab the choke hand as I'm doing that same pressure and just like pull forward, right? Right. Instead, I want you to extend. I want to think about compressing everything. Everything in. So the ball of his shoulder is choking him on this side, and my hand is choking him on the other. So it's almost like an arm triangle, but from a collar choke position. So all of that, again, I'm here. I'm in the back mount. I start going for my clock choke. He shifts down. I would try to fight him. I don't want him to clear his head, but he keeps shifting. He's really committed to this escape. So up, back. From here, I'll also pivot, and like I said, to get my choke. This is also accessible if, let's say, and probably more common, you're right, Denner? Yeah. If I'm going for the bow and arrow choke, so let's say I'm here, I had the shallow grip, I started transitioning out to the bow and arrow, and he starts shifting down his face. This is much higher percentage to clear the head, because he's already kind of lower on my body. So let's see if we go back. So I've gone for the bow and arrow, he starts shifting down, I feel it coming, so boom, boom. Yeah, super tight. John, here. So again, and John, let's shift a little bit to the left, please. So again, we're starting, let's say, with the clock choke. So he starts shifting down in space to clear this head. At first, I'm going to kind of pinch my elbow back if I feel like I'm in danger of that. I don't necessarily have to hand this escape away, but he's insisting to make this happen. So elbow up, slide behind the back of the head. This would slide to a shallow grip. I'll hold kind of loose for you. And then I want to think about making my hands connect on the other side. Yeah, so it's like straight elbows. If I'm in the bow and arrow choke, it's the same principle. You got to have a little more sensitivity and timing on this because he does have more of an avenue for the head escape. We'll talk about what happens if the head escapes in a minute, but I'm here, I went for my bow and arrow, and he's just shifting down exactly, and that's his escape route, right? As you can see, he could get out of there there's definitely the options. Say we go back. So if I feel that's coming, so I went for my bow and arrow, and he starts shifting down, I have to pinch my elbow back, so keep going for it. Up, boom, I get my head. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. Cool. Let's go ahead and partner up, work on that one, and then I will show, we'll talk a little bit about some odds and ends. So, all right, let's get to it. 1, 2, 3.